We got 3 now.
Oh, we have 3 now. So, anyway, we'd like to introduce Tyler Gillian, who is our newest member. So, welcome. First order of business is the oath of offices and election of officers.
All right.
Oh, they'll say that, don't they?
Phil, do we need the rest of the board members online to turn their video on?
Yeah, all board members have to be on with cameras on, please.
Oh, thank you, Frank. There it is.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay.
Frank's going to administer the oath.
All right. Would board members please raise their right hand and repeat after me? I state your name.
I, Jason Ashford,
I'm Brian Pulaski.
Do solemnly swear and affirm
Do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
and the Constitution of the State of Indiana,
and the Constitution of the State of Indiana,
and I will faithfully, impartially, and lawfully
faithfully, impartially, lawfully
carry out the duties
carry out the duties
as a member of
as a member of
the St. Joseph County Redevelopment Commission.
The St.
Joseph County Redevelopment Commission.
Development Commission.
Congratulations. I will have paperwork for you all to sign.
All right, thank you. Now since it's the first meeting of the year, we're required to elect new officers. Positions would be president, vice president, secretary. I believe that's it. Are there any motions for the office of president?
Well, I'd like to recognize Brian. Thanks for doing such a great job. I just thought maybe we would nominate Dennis based on his in-person attendance over the past year. So if he's willing to serve, or there's no other discussion, I would nominate Dennis Jordan to be president.
I would enthusiastically second that.
Okay. Any further discussion or nominations? All those in favor, aye.
Since we're on the
Aye.
video, we'll do a roll call vote.
Okay.
So we have a motion and a second. Mr. Jordan, how do you vote?
Unfortunately, yes.
Mr. Pulaski, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Greip, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Critchlow, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Mr. Gillian, how do you vote?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay. For the office of vice president, I'd like to nominate Tom Gripe, if he's willing to serve.
If there's no discussion, I would second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Pulaski, how do you vote?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Jordan?
Yes?
Mr. Greip?
Yes.
Mr. Critchlow?
Yes.
Mr. Gillian?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay. The final office is that of secretary, and again, I'd like to nominate Jason Critchlow to continue in that role.
I would second that.
There's no discussion. Mr. Jordan, how do you vote?
Yes?
Mr. Pulaski, how do you vote?
Yes, please.
Mr. Greip, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Critchlow?
Yes.
Mr. Gillian?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Because, thank you, everyone, approval of minutes. Did everyone have a chance to read the minutes from our last meeting in December? If there,
I've got a question
Yes.
on this. I received a couple emails about the public comment portion of our meetings. And the question was raised is, do we not include the public comments by particular speakers in meeting minutes? And, is that?
In a verbatim style?
Or topics, are we doing what everyone else does? The question was asked, and I said that I would bring the question here for discussion.
I'll be honest, I don't know how area plan or board of commissioner or area plan or BZA do theirs. Do they do theirs verbatim, Shelley?
Yes, yeah. And then if I'm able to get who's ever in the audience, if they speak, and I'll double check with you or with Phil, who is there, and if there's any comments, I try and get those in there, if I can still hear them on the audio, but sometimes the audio is low and I
Maybe
think-
just topics or general,
Yeah, we can.
doesn't have to be
we-
verbatim.
We can certainly work on that.
Okay, that's my only note for the future is, I've had the emails that people would ask that those be included in the minutes.
Yeah, I think in the past, when we did minutes, it was just name, address, and there might have been topic with it, but we're trying to get all the minutes standardized between our boards, but we'll look at that.
Well, then,
And
yeah,
work
whatever
to do
everyone
that.
else is doing too would be fine
Okay.
as well.
But we will certainly work on that.
Okay, other than that, I would move to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Do we have to do roll call? Okay.
Motion to approve the minutes, Mr. Pulaski,
Aye.
Mr. Jordan,
Aye.
Mr. Gray,
Aye.
Mr. Critchlow,
Aye.
Mr. Gillian.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. All right. The Economic Development Area Units, because Mr. Pulaski has to, at some point, depart the meeting, we should cover the resolution so that he can be part of that discussion first.
Actually, the resolution on the agenda today is just for discussion. What we'd like to do is move down to the 2 professional service agreements, cover those, and then we'll go back up. And, because really the core of today's meeting is really the budget and trying to get us positioned for February. So, item 3A4 is a professional service agreement with TAI Ginsburg. They provide grants, consulting, and advocacy. They've been with us for a couple of years. They've been with us since, I think, 2018, serving to be our grants liaison and coordinator at the DC level and also at the regional level as we work on grants. They're working right now with Elkhart and Western Railroad on the grant that we're doing for the Chrissy grant. We talked about that at our last meeting, a couple of crossing upgrades. But the proposal before you today had been a standard monthly retainer payment. Now what we're looking to do is switch those into an hourly based with a not to exceed amount. So the proposal before you today is an hourly rate with a not to exceed of $60,000. We'd ask for your approval of this contract. With the amount of federal money especially and other money floating around right now, the ability to have somebody that's involved at the federal level with these grants, especially at a transportation side, is imperative for where we believe we need to be going for several projects. So we'd ask for your approval of this contract. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Bill, this is Tom.
Yep.
Why did we change the nature of the contract from retainer to hourly?
So as we, over the last couple of years, we've been trying to be a little more responsive as far as getting getting monthly reports as far as the work being done. What we thought was a better way to handle this and some of the other contracts was to do it based on actual hourly work. So instead of just paying a lump sum per month, felt it was better to have it based on the actual work produced, so.
Based on the activity from 2021, if we would have had this done last year, which method would have cost the county more?
I actually believe this would cost us less, so I think there's the potential that the standard monthly rate would have cost us more.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Is there any further discussion?
I make a motion to approve.
I would second.
We have a motion second.
Mr. Jordan, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Pulaski, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Gripe, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Critchlow?
Yes?
Mr. Gillian?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
And then skipping down to the New Carlisle Economic Development Area, again, over the last several years, we've worked with Steve Hora and Tri-County Appraisals to provide us with real estate and other services, real estate-related services out in the New Carlisle area, as well as other parts of the county. That contract, too, was set up at I guess it was a quarterly payment. And so, again, we're looking to switch that to an hourly rate. So instead of $5,000 payments every quarter, with a max total of $25,000, we're splitting that up with an initial payment engagement fee of $2,500 and an hourly rate of $80. Again, I think based on the work, this will be able to be better tracked as far as how much work is actually produced over the course of the year. And I think this, again, to Mr. Greif's previous question, I think this will be more in line and probably a better rate for us than just an open contract. If there's any
Bill,
question?
Bill, my only question on this one is, do we even need a contract like this? Are we envisioning that much activity in the acquisition and the appraisal part for 2022 that we would need to engage?
So there's a lot of work that Steve and his group provide just on relations, farmer relations in coordination with some of the option agreements and some of the work as far as the pre-work that goes into getting some of those relationships laid. So I'm sure Phil could attest to this, that the service has been invaluable as we've looked to put together property out in the New Carlisle area.
Okay, and you envision that being equally needed for this coming year?
I do, yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Bill, without this, every time you would be looking at a property, you would have to bring before us a contract to engage with real estate agent?
That's correct.
Without this?
Yep. One of the things in particular that Steve will be doing for us immediately is going out and obtaining farm lease rates for us. We have 3 different fields that in the past we've leased out. We've got to have two appraisals, and Steve coordinates all of that. And so there's a bunch of those kind of services that he provides that are, very valuable for us.
Is this coming out of the New Carlisle
It is.
budget? Although in the contract, he could do this anywhere in the county.
Certainly could, and what we would do is we would use one of those other lines to cover that. Again, because it's hourly, it makes it a little easier to track those payments pulling out of other funds.
Typically, when I'm paying those bills, it's done for the work done in that area. So, for example, Thorn Grodnick does a lot of our redevelopment work across multiple areas. So when I get invoices from them, it's separated so that anything in New Carlisle comes from that New Carlisle fund. Anything in the AM General comes from that AM General. So Steve's would be in the same vein, even though I think we primarily use him out in that New Carlisle area.
Sure.
Bill, so is this service just then to expedite that process so that we're not having to go, like you said, contract by contract? Is that the only thing?
It is. There are a lot of cases where we have some properties we may be interested. Steve will go out and do, because he's an appraiser, he'll go out and do some pre-appraisal work for us just to help us get an understanding of values, to understand if it fits within our budget structure or not. So there's a lot of those kind of pre-services he does for us.
Thanks.
I make a motion to approve.
Second?
Nope, somebody else beat me.
Any further
think Tom.
discussion?
So for purposes of the record, that was a motion by Mr. Pulaski and I believe a second by Mr. Critchlow.
Sure.
Mr. Pulaski, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Jordan?
Aye.
Mr. Gray?
Aye.
Mr. Critchlow?
Yes.
And Mr. Gillen?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
The last thing we need to cover real quick before it just, because we probably need to vote on it, as we looked at the calendar for 2022, we had approved it at our last meeting. What we did not realize that the November 8th meeting, which is a Tuesday, would fall on an election day. So we just asked that we move it to the Wednesday. That seems to be the day that all the other public meetings have been moved to. So we just asked for your approval of a revised calendar. And if we get to November 9th and we don't need the meeting, or we do, we'll, as we do with all of them, we'll play it by ear. But we just ask for your approval for a revised calendar.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'd second.
We have a motion by Mr. Jordan, a second by Mr. Critchlow. Mr. Pulaski, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Jordan?
Yes.
Mr. Gray?
Aye.
Mr. Critchlow?
Yes.
Mr. Gillian?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Well, at this point in the meeting, I guess we'd like to go backwards and back up to the front of the agenda for the budget information for December, and Chris will answer any questions on that.
So before you've got the kind of the end of year budget tables that were all calculated through invoices all the way through the end of December. Major kind of expenses in the AM General was the $415,000 payment for the Penn Fire Station. Not sure, I can't remember. It was just the interlocal agreement, right? So that was the big one out of AM General. And as far as I know, I think we should be done with that, with those payments for that. Other expenses were with the Avonmarsh County Connections Plan, just reimbursing Elkhart County. They were taking on 100% of it, where we should have been sharing. So They paid the 100%, and we paid them back the 50%. We were splitting that. Outside of that, those were the kind of the major projects, and then all of those numbers should move into the draft budget for those total cash balances at the end of the year. So if there's any questions, be happy to answer.
No questions? Don't have to prove it. I don't believe so. Just move on.
So in your packet, the, kind of the next two items are the budget draft. There's a budget narrative, and then there's a resolution 2022-01. And so I guess by way of high-level overview, every year we're required to put together a budget. We're not set on a time or anything when it has to be approved, but obviously, as we enter into contracts, we need to have the budget in place. What we have to do, once we approve the budget, then, is approve a resolution associated to the budget to appropriate the funds into designated categories. So what we have done with this year's budget is really try to look at the buckets that all the money goes into, try to narrow those buckets down to very defined buckets, and try to have some consistency across funds. As we looked at last year's budget and tried to then work into this year's budget, there wasn't necessarily that consistency. And I know that Chris and Steve and Daniel Dalton have done a fantastic job with this. We have beat this thing about every way, sideways that you could beat a budget. Just, I guess, maybe start through the narrative a little bit. That's the bigger, thicker document. So what we did is we really had 5 categories. We had interest on debt and principal on debt, so those were all the debt service-related items. Consultants and contractual services, that bucket is all of the legal fees, financial fees, real estate service fees, when we do appraisals, engineering services, things like that. All of those things will be in that bucket. Economic development is the bucket that contains all the projects. So when we actually do projects, whenever we actually buy land, whenever we demolish something, whenever we build something, that will all fall under economic development. And then other expenditures is really the category for contracts that serve multiple budgets. So the comprehensive plan, the county engineering standards, things like that that cross multiple budgets fit into that category. And again, those categories, those buckets are reflected in the appropriation resolution and then also in the budget document itself, the budget breakout itself. This year, through the distribution, in the winter distribution, we received approximately $2.6 million. If we reflect that out over the December and June increment disbursements, which are what our budget is based off of on incoming funds, that equates to roughly $5.2 million of money for this coming year of new money. If you flip to page 2 on the narrative, you can see as we look at budgets over the last 10 years, we have grown through the actions of the Redevelopment Commission, have grown our revenue from 2011 from 2.1 million to 5.7 million of new funds this year. So a lot of new revenue coming into the area. A lot of that's allocated to projects, but again, you can see how those monies have been spent across the different areas. And then the bottom half of the table on page 2 shows the assessed valuation for the various taxing districts. Again, you can see that the valuation in those taxing districts has grown considerably. So as we do new projects, as we add value, obviously a lot of the value in the new Carlisle area was the energy center. That was a huge valuation, but certainly as Electric Last Mile Solutions takes over the old AM General building, that will add value into the AM General district and so forth and so on. The next several pages in this narrative report just basically break out a little history of the area, talks about the expiration date of when the areas expire. And then there's some project information of what we would propose to use or what we would see as the projects for 2022. And then we also included in a lot of cases the development area map. a lot of cases, we don't talk much about the Wyatt area, for example, but it's probably good to see where the Wyatt Economic Development Area is. Same with the New Carlisle area. We have a Economic Development Area, Allocation Area 2, and Allocation Area Number 1. Well, where are those and how do they overlay each other? So we tried to provide all that information in here, again, with some core projects that we would anticipate from a need or a staffing level standpoint that we would accomplish in each of the development areas. Then, again, going to the resolution, what we did is as we take those projects and as we break them into those buckets, the appropriation resolution, which we'll ask for your approval at the next meeting, takes those total funds and shows that in the consultants and contractual services for the Wyatt area, we anticipate this much revenue is needed, or this much budget is needed in that line, and same with all the other accounts. So, Chris, I don't know if there's anything else maybe to add at this point.
Yeah, I think, for, when we were looking at it and compared to last year's, and, as I was taking things over from Jessica, it was, two different logics on how, we approached how to, expend this money. And so what I ended up trying to do was, in this budget, was to make it very clear which bucket it was coming out of. So, consultants and contracts, that was anything that was, say, digital, desktop, those types of things. Economic development was really, we are doing something to the land. We are building a road. We are buying property. So just trying to really separate those out, but then also keep them separate from those special projects, the other expenditures where it may cross over those lines. And hopefully, with this new budget, it'll be a little bit more clear as to which bucket some of these funds are going to come out of. My only other question was, as we look at this budget and compared with the information that you guys got last year, from a summary standpoint, that budget narrative that I kind of write up, just the simple Word document that shows what the expenses are, do we want to continue to do that? I think that's probably been worthwhile just to break it down as to those levels. But then also, how much summary information do you want? There's that summary page on last year's budget that was very cumbersome to fill out. I'll just say that. There was a lot of spreadsheets, those numbers would fill in, but then there was a lot of manual input as well, and then having to match numbers. And so really it comes down from your point of view as to how much information do you want, how much information is too much, and then we can gauge kind of how we do that more appropriately in '22.
Tom, any thoughts?
I would probably say that because we put this together and you're talking to the commission and then it's open to the public, I think we need to make sure that as we put things in there, we err on the side of explaining in, be it a summary form or a relatively simple form so the reader understands what we're looking at. I don't know about all the detail. I think you guys do fine with the detail, but it's the summary so that if a passive or a casual person takes a look at this, they don't have to be digging through 100 pages, scratching their head saying, what is this thing all about? So tell us what you're going to tell us, and tell us what you told us. I know that takes a little extra work, but when you consider, we're talking about taxpayer money, and this is an open document, everybody should have a right to see it and understand what it's saying.
Okay.
Tyler, you haven't seen one probably.
Yeah, I agree with what Tom was just sharing.
Okay. Well, I'll come up with kind of a summary form then that kind of shows all of these and just budgets it down for a monthly expense, and then I'll continue with that monthly narrative just to kind of hit the highlights of where the money's coming from. So
How much time does that take you?
at the beginning of the year, it took quite a while because it was trying to figure out where all the budgets are. Towards the end, I could do it in the morning. It'd still take about 3 or 4 hours to really knock down and make sure that the numbers are matching what the financial system is showing. So it's a couple of different spreadsheets to track where the expenses are coming from, and then utilizing that to then fill in the summary sheet. And so it took me the first time about 2 days to do it. Just, I was trying to figure out where everything was going. I was able to knock that down to, a morning of just concentrated work, but it's still,
But this
Takes
is
a
all
bit.
tracked anyway, right? Like you said, it's just more of this is a double check you're referring to?
it's really, yeah, I mean, we track the expenses. I pay all the invoices out and track all of those expenses. With the new ERP system, I don't know what the reporting capabilities will be with that. So that could help with some of the transparency and just ease of getting numbers from the financial system into a, document like this. We're not going live with that until April, I believe. Now they've pushed it back. So as we get more and more into that ERP and tracking invoices and tracking expenses, there may be opportunities for efficiencies there.
Would you anticipate we would vote on this resolution next meeting?
That would be the anticipation, yeah. And so what we anticipate is between now and then, having some smaller meetings, tweaks, things like that, to answer any questions anybody has. So
Our portion of paying for the comprehensive plan, where did that come out of? I don't recall. Did we pay it already, or are we gonna, is that an ongoing expense?
It's as invoices come in. And so basically what we have done is we've split the cost with the county council. I think it's the lit fund 1112. So when I get the invoices in, 50% comes from that 1112 account, 50% comes from one of the POs we've set up in one of our funds, basically. And so I'll just split it up 50-50, even Steven, and then just kind of knock down the POs as I go.
But that's budgeted under New Carlisle?
it's budgeted over.
It's actually 3.
Yeah, 3. So Wyatt, New Carlisle, and
Yeah.
in general.
Yeah, I think New Carlisle's got the largest expense, just because of the size of it, but everything else, yeah. So I'll start with one PO and just knock it down until I clean that one out, and then start in on the next one.
Gotcha.
Any other questions?
There's no question.
Bill, this is Tom. Let me ask you just at a broad level, as you look at 2022 versus 2021, what would you say are the top 3 projects that we're going to be addressing as far as redevelopment is concerned?
So I would say the top 3 will be likely a solar farm project north of the New Carlisle Economic Development Area, an expansion and growth at the electric last mile solutions, and then other projects in the New Carlisle Indiana Enterprise Center area. At the next meeting, we'll have the Chamber's report that talks about lead response. We've already seen 4 major projects come through just since the first of the year. And all 4 of those would be New Carlisle compatible. So I believe that this will be the year we'll land one of those projects or a couple of those projects. So I would say from a staffing standpoint, those 3, and then the sub pieces related to that, whether it's utility extension, right-of-way improvement, things like that related to those projects.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. No further questions. Then we're at, looks like, what, 3B or 3C?
So 3C, I1, Electric Last Mile Solutions, just to give a quick little project update. Electric Last Mile Solutions is actively working in the former SF Motors, former AM General building. They have just recently received their approval to build on-road vehicles, so that on-road vehicle production will start later this month. They had to make some modifications to the body of the existing vehicle so that they could go from a campus model or a low-speed vehicle to an on-speed production vehicle. They also have a secondary vehicle. It looks more like it's the front end. It's a box end of a urban utility vehicle, so they can put a flatbed on the back of it. They can put a box on the back of it. They can customize it in a variety of different ways. That product line will cause an expansion of the building. And they've already bought a building, or they're in final negotiations to buy a building across the street from the plant for warehousing of product. As they get batteries and other parts in, they need space for warehousing. So a lot of activity at Electric Last Mile Solutions, and we'll have more conversation about that, I would imagine, over the next couple of months. So.
In that regard, what would our role be in that expansion? What are you envisioning?
So I think that's what we're trying to understand. I think one of the things, because we're a landowner, we own the land that they probably would need to build on. We'd probably need to convert that lease to a land sale, which would be good for the commission. We'd get out of the land ownership at that site. There may be some other utility extensions that we may need to partner with them on. I think they're still trying to figure out what their needs are, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And then I think we've covered everything else except item 4B. And I just, in the packet, there's 2 of the years of the contract logs. We had talked at the last meeting, just trying to understand what some of the contracts are that we've had in the past couple of years and dollar amounts related to those contracts. We've got 2 more years that hopefully I'll get out to you before the end of the week. And then what we'll do is we'll send it out to you in an Excel spreadsheet format where we can group the types, so to speak, so all the engineering services could be grouped, or all the real estate services could be grouped. So as you look at some of the numbers for some of our contract values over the last 4 to 5 years, you can see how some of those break out. And then if we want to have a further conversation about, contract, dollar values, things like that, at least you'll have all the numbers from the last several years. So this was a little bit more of a task than I realized when we started putting it together and trying to clean up the list, making sure we had everything properly listed, so.
Can I ask a question on this? When I saw this, I thought, boy, that's very helpful. But then I was looking at just the last 2 professional service agreements. Are professional service agreements in these?
Yes, they are.
All right, well then, are the 2 that we just renewed today, are they on here somewhere? Because we had worked with them in the past. Maybe I just didn't see them in here.
Yeah, so if you look at the 2021 list, TAI Ginsburg would be under, let's see, would be number, oh, it was actually approved in it was approved in 2022 for 2021. No, it was approved in 2020 for 2021. So if you go to the 2020 log, it would have been number 24. And then the real estate services with Tri-County Appraisal would have been 29. So we actually approved
Okay, good.
those in 2020 for 2021, so.
That's it. Okay, I was just looking on 21. Thank
Yep.
you.
Any other items from the board members?
I do have a question. So in this contract log, I'm looking at some of these figures, which are like $638,000. Is there a way that we would be able to be sent, say, the breakdown, and I'm not trying to cause any more work for you, Chris, but say the Strawberry Inwood Culvert Project, is there a way that you can get almost a line item of at least some of the high dollar things that are in there so we could look at it?
I could definitely look into getting that, yes.
So at our last meeting, Tyler, the question came up, should we be adopting a policy on bidding for contracts? And if we were to do that, what would the dollar amount be? So part of this exercise was to see, because that could be burdensome, right, to the staff, like how long does that take, that process, slow down projects. So part of what they put together here was so that we could see if you were going to pick a dollar amount, how many of those projects would fall under that amount, Because right now, we do not have a policy in place on certain amounts.
Just solely because of the workload that it would be.
Yeah, well, it's just for sort of the like give and take on being responsible, but not, being efficient.
Yeah, the idea is under Indiana law for professional services, which is generally what these are, there's no requirement to have a policy, but to help keep track of taxpayer money, the idea is perhaps we create our own policy, and then the issue becomes, where do you want to cap that at, or where do you want to begin bidding requirements?
Okay.
It also has to consider if someone would like to develop a certain parcel that is under our domain, you'd have to be able to be fairly prompt in responding. And there's a few things that we just can't do quickly. So we'll use Sender and Company over and over, just because Steve's here, because they have the depth of knowledge. But how do you meld that into?
Right. Okay,
the large
that makes sense.
Yeah, even just glancing at this, my thoughts were, so if we would have picked 50,000 as our limit, well, the vast majority of these are under 50,000. So, would that be appropriate, or is that a burden? I don't know. I'm just one person, but.
what I
Yeah,
did.
it's just first day questions, I guess.
No,
No problem.
No, this is brand new.
Beautiful.
All right.
You know, when I looked at this, I was thinking the same thing. You know, there's, you know, I'm not talking about an average, I'm talking about the median. Did you guys do an exercise of that? Is that where's the median of these different contracts where half is above and half is below? Because it's not in Excel, I can't do that on my own. But I
Yeah.
think this is a good beginning.
Yeah, Tom, what we'll do is we'll include a tabbed page, so all the real estate ones will be put on the tab and all the legal, and so by narrowing the type size, that allows us maybe to do that exercise a little bit better, and it allows you to look at that too. So we'll have that out when that goes out to everything, or out to
Okay.
everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, it's now time for the public comment. It's limited to 3 minutes. Anyone wishing to speak, if you could say your name and address, appreciate it. Okay, we have someone walking to the podium.
Good morning. Dan Caruso, 305 Compton Street, New Carlisle.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Good to see everybody. A couple of questions, or not questions, but just statements. I heard a lot of talk of the big push to start the New Carlisle development, the different economic development areas in New Carlisle. And I heard especially on the solar project, Project Honeysuckle. I'm not sure if it's still called that or not. Seeing how there will be temporary jobs to put this in place, about a year's worth, I would say we should follow the lead of Jefferson Township in Cassopolis, who tabled their solar discussions because there's too much uncertainty, too much that's not been put in writing, and there is no comprehensive plan to say what is permissible, what kind of screening they're going to use. My other questions on that are not questions. It's a fact, because the people who are running Project Honeysuckle said there's only going to be 1 to 3 full-time jobs once this is in place. And all along, one of the goals of development, of bringing people in, is to bring jobs in. And I'm going to say there's going to be more than 1 to 3 agricultural jobs lost right up front and farther downstream from taking 1,900 acres of fertile farmland on that north side of New Carlisle, which was just talked about here this morning, and putting solar panels on it. There's no comprehensive plan right now to say what I know Mr. Shalio said, that New Carlisle is a big focus this year. We're going to get some major moves in there this year. We don't know, how do we know we're going to get anything in there this year? We don't know what the new comprehensive plan is yet. There's a meeting on the 20th of January to discuss the makeup of the new comprehensive plan, but somehow we know there's going to be a major move in New Carlisle. But the one thing we do know is that solar is not the answer to jobs. Solar, if you want to eliminate jobs, sure, because solar people admit themselves it's only 1 to 3 permanent jobs to maintain a 1,900-acre site of solar panels, which I don't particularly want to look out my back window and see a bunch of stuff reflecting back at me. I know a lot of you are over here. It's not in your backyard. You need to talk to us. There needs to be conditions. There needs to be screening. This stuff needs to be talked out thoroughly instead of coming in here this morning and hearing that there's a major move in New Carlisle this year. That's our main focus. That's our big focus right now, and that's what we're looking at. We've heard nothing. Talk to us. And I don't mean talk to our town council behind closed doors who tell us, oh, we met, but we can't tell you what we said. It's time to get stuff out in the open, include us in the conversation. Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else who'd like to speak? Hearing none.
Shelley, do we have anybody online?
Hi, I would like to speak just shortly, please.
Sure.
My name is Deborah Doral.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I came to the last meeting and spoke, and I noticed that my comments were not included in the minutes. I'm just a little concerned about why the public's comments are not included fully.
Hey, Deborah, it's Jason. We talked about that right here at the very beginning of the meeting, and they're going to.
Oh, sorry, I
No,
had
no, no
trouble.
worries. They're going to standardize the process so that it's done the same way in all other councils, and it'll probably include topics and such. But what I didn't offer before was if you want to email me or Bill the statement that you read at our December meeting,
Okay.
we can amend the
Okay.
meeting minutes.
Okay.
Or we can work on getting that added to the minutes. I'd make that motion at the next meeting, or even
Okay.
now, if you send it to us.
Okay. I will send it to you through the email then.
Okay,
Is that okay then?
sure. Is it too late then if I would make a motion to amend the meeting minutes from December to include Deborah Dural's statement under the public comment portion?
I would,
Or since we passed that already, is that not possible?
I think you can make the motion to amend at this point, as subject to her providing the comments for us to supplement.
I believe the audio was a little faint.
Yeah.
Because she was so soft-spoken, and we were upstairs on 7, so I didn't want to
Okay, so that's approved,
without having the entire meeting.
or,
Yeah, send it over to us, Deborah.
okay.
And I'd make
That's great.
the motion as described by council.
Ma'am?
Okay, so you still have to vote on that motion?
And Deborah, just for purposes of the record, could you state your address, please?
Okay. I'm having a little bit trouble hearing you, but it's 21677 Autumn Road, South Bend, 46628.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in the public comments section? Yeah.
We need to vote on that motion.
Yeah. Do we need to?
If
That
we
was-
could finish public comment, and
Okay.
then after that, we could vote on the
Okay.
motion and hear Mr. Gillian's comment. Anybody else wish to speak?
Okay, hearing none. Mr. Gillian?
I do have a question regarding that solar farm project out in New Carlisle. My question would be, do we know how much electricity this is supposed to generate?
It's 150 megawatt.
150
Solar farm.
megawatts. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. We would like to amend the
So
minutes.
do we need to
approved.
close public comment?
Yes.
Okay.
Motion to
Okay.
close public comment.
Okay, motion to close public comment, sorry.
So moved?
Second.
Vote on that. Mr. Jordan, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Gripe?
Yes.
Mr. Critchlow?
Yes.
And Mr. Gillian?
Yes.
Public comment is now closed. Motion to amend the meeting minutes from last meeting?
Correct, to include Deborah Dural's comment, statement, pending, subject to her sending it over to us.
Motion so made by Mr. Critchlow. Second?
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Mr. Critchlow, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Jordan, how do you
Yes.
vote? Mr. Gripe?
Yes.
Mr. Gillian?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other comments, questions? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved?
Is there a second?
Motion and a second. Oh, sorry, no second. Second?
Yep, second.
Okay, thank you.
Motion and a second. Mr. Jordan?
Yes?
Mr. Critchlow?
Yes.
Mr. Gripe?
Yes.
Mr. Gillian?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you, everyone.
I swear, next meeting, we'll keep it on the rail. Instead of jumping all over, that was,
Just trying to be a crowd pleaser.
yeah, a little bit of work, so.
Second.
Oh, let me get
Oh, yeah, You know, technically, you don't even have to
Recording
vote
stopped.
to end a meeting. You just need a motion.
Yes.
But we always,
done it
yeah,
that
we always
way.
done it
We
that
can
way.
I don't
switch it if you
remember ever
want.
voting to end public
I
comment.
brought that up to
either,
Jamie,
but
like
that's
on
fine.
day one. I was like, I didn't think we had
We
to
could
vote
do it
on
whichever
that.
way you, I just have always
No,
done it
no, we'll
how-
just do it how we've always done
How
it.
I would done it.
You know,
It's my oath in
you did make a good point on the professional services. For things like financial services, we could exclude those from the policy.
Yes, that'd be
So-
true.
Well, happily, it looked like the
Where
vast
am I at here?
majority.
With my illegible,
The
everybody else has
wording
nice
we do
time
is
already,
low.
but me,
Thank you very much. This was exciting.
it's just mine. It was better, but I've signed it so often in my life, I've just
Phil, do
given
we need
up.
to sign, the oaths?
Yes, you'll need to sign,
You like it? You're on hot mic now.
I brought my